is a word that gets thrown around so often that we don't normally notice that this term is not something that should be considered a fixed definition. We have different kinds of celebrities: actors, footballers, musicians, politicians, CEOs, TV personalities, people who are famous because they're rich, people who are famous of being famous, people who are ironically famous, influencers, YouTubers. We have even micro celebrities. These and a lot of other types of celebrities are the same in this quality, that they are more or less famous, but they are different in so many aspects of their type of celebrity and the word they get influenced by and influence. Matthew Perry was a celebrity. He was one of those super famous celebrities that when he died, most of the people in the world knew who he was. The reason behind his global fame was that he was one of the actors in the sitcom Friends. This show is so popular that it is one of the most watched TV series of all time. In this video, I want to talk about how his fame and type of celebrity, which I call sitcom celebrity, affected his life, career, identity, and death. So, how can we define a sitcom celebrity? Well, generally in the 80s, there was this distinction defined by many scholars between TV and movie celebrities, that television celebrity is known by its familiarity, whereas movie stardom can both be defined by its familiarity and out of reach personality. Based on this assumption, television stars are more defined by their characters than their actual name and stardom. In other words, they are haunted by the characters they have played on TV. Of course, a lot has changed since the 80s with the streaming services and social media platforms. The line between TV shows and film and the subsequent stardom created by them has been blurred. However, Matthew Perry's stardom belongs to the era that this distinction was quite strong. Specifically, the characteristics of sitcom stardom was quite like what has been described by those scholarly works in the 80s. You can even say that sitcom celebrities of the last decade of the 20th century were the ultimate examples of this distinction. After all, the more popular the sitcom was, the longer the show was running, and the characters were established in the popular psyche.
To producers who said, well, I don't want the audience to think of you as George.
Right.
And I went, nobody worries about hiring Tom Hanks and they're going to think of him as Forrest Gump. Why am I saddled with this thing? You know, my theater career was more often than not playing 15 people a night. I'm a little bit of a chameleon. And, you know, I desperately tried to create a different impression.
And even when the show ended, the reruns and the clips of the show were going to be watched repeatedly. As Susan Murray, one of the scholars on TV stardom, argues, through repeats, certain television stars became a constant presence in the viewer's home, like an ingratiating neighbor with whom you are extremely familiar. As I mentioned, Friends is, if not the most popular, but one of the most watched sitcoms of all time. Therefore, the persona that has been constructed around its stars is heavily based on the characters of the show. To understand Matthew Perry's celebrity, then, the question could be, what are the characteristics of Chandler Bing, who was played by Matthew Perry? The character of Chandler Bing is most famous for his humor, but not any humor, sarcastic humor. This brand of humor, that can be called verbal irony as well, is known for its self-aware tendencies.
I'm not great at the advice. Can I interest you in a sarcastic comment?
In their review of the relationship between this kind of character and the show as a whole, Simon Knox and Kai Hano Schwind argue that Chandler's role in relation to the rest of the series' core group can be described as that of a meta-humorous commentator or narrator, both literally and figuratively observing the others.
Take it anymore, so you win, okay? Here. Phoebes, flying a jet, better make it a spaceship so you can get back to your home planet. And Ross, phone call for you today. Tom Jones, he wants his pants back. And Hornswoggle, what are you, dating a character from Fraggle Rock?
This attitude of Chandler creates a distance between him and the other characters and the show itself. As shown and NARCISSIST in Friends, unlike Seinfeld, the crude, sarcastic part of the show is framed by the overall warmth and immediate intimacy of the characters. Contrary to what those guys wrote, in my opinion, the intimacy after the sarcasm, it creates a contrast. This contrast actually never resolves anything, but creates an unnegotiable distance between irony and intimacy. This distance creates this character as the most real one, or the narrator of the show. After all, he expresses what a lot of audiences think or feel about other characters.
I have a flaw, big deal. Like Joey's constant knuckle cracking isn't annoying, and Ross with his overpronouncing every single word, and Monica with that snort when she laughs.
The hug and intimacy afterward for the audience is only a sitcom hug, something that never happens in real life. Therefore, to be in distance is how the audience identifies with and defines the character of Chandler Bing. In this sense, the identity that people construct around the actor Matthew Perry is his ironic distance as well. So how does this ironic distance, this persona who is supposed to be constantly sarcastic to be real or himself, affect the life of Matthew Perry, affected his life after the show ended? The answer, I think, lies in our understanding of postmodern identity. In his article called Postmodern Theories of Celebrities, Barron argues that celebrities need to constantly reinvent themselves and their identity to stay relevant. As a result, in our contemporary society, they are the best examples of postmodern ideas about the concept of identity. Postmodern identity comes from postmodern condition in which we do not possess some stable, fixed personality. Due to the fast-paced society of modern era, we always have to adjust our identity. As Douglas Kellner suggests, identity becomes a game that one plays so that one can easily shift from one identity to another. This idea may not apply to all people or all societies, but Barron argues that this way of constructing and reconstructing identity is quite prominent in a celebrity culture. This case is even more complex for someone like Matthew Perry or any sitcom celebrity, as their identity is overwhelmingly pigeonholed by their characters of their sitcom. Alice Leppert, in her article Friends Forever, Sitcom Celebrity and its Afterlives, goes into detail as to how specifically the stars of Friends try to reinvent themselves after the show. But before that, she laments that Friends itself is a show about celebrity culture. She says, Friends consistently engages with discourses of stardom, incorporating many high-profile guest stars. She goes on to say, the sheer number of famous guest stars that cycle through Friends creates a celebrified, diegetic world where each character regularly interacts with, is romantically involved with, or is blood related to a celebrity. Based on this assertion then, not only the stars of the show are recognized as famous, but the show suggests implicitly that the characters are famous as well. She argues because of this celebrity-centered nature of the show, the stars and their characters become so overwhelmingly tied in together that the actors after the show ended had only two options. The first option was to continue as their character, or self-consciously create a meta-commentary on their nature of their stardom. In other words, be like friends about it without being in friends.
You have to really feel the lyrics. Like just like how? Like they won't take you to the bed. Okay. Okay. You'll get there. Okay. Won't take you to the bed.
Matt LeBlanc and Lisa Kudrow have tried this option. LeBlanc, after Friends, went on to play his role again in the spin-off series, Joey, which was not successful, and after 2 seasons, it ended. After some years of hiatus, he played the role of himself as Matt LeBlanc, a Friends star in a show called Episodes. Leppert argues, Episodes self-consciously collapses Matt and Joey and suggests that Matt uses Joey strategically in his career and his personal life. The show made him a more successful, or you may say prestigious actor, as he was nominated for Best Actor in Golden Globe Awards. So you can see this self-conscious playing with his identity as a sitcom celebrity paid off. This was, to a certain extent, the same story for Lisa Kudrow, who may not directly played with her stardom like LeBlanc had, but she played the role of an ex-famous TV star in a TV series, The Comeback. Leppert says she, unlike Jennifer Aniston and Courtney Cox, didn't have as much star power as they did. She didn't marry a famous movie star or was a subject of the tabloid magazine like her 2 female co-stars. Also, she never deemed as beautiful as the other 2. In The Comeback, these struggles exactly are the subject of the show, as Kudrow, who plays Valerie, pathetically attempts to return to her glory days, wherein she played the It Girl, and nod to Jennifer Aniston and Cox at the time, only to be cast as Aunt Saucy and pushed to the margins of young, attractive, rising stars. This, in my opinion, this clever, reflective play with that aspect of her celebrity makes her the most successful in terms of the artistic expression of identity amongst her co-stars in Friends. Option 2 for these kinds of celebrities is to break down the dichotomy between movie and TV stardom. The case is kind of true for Jennifer Aniston. Aniston went on to play in blockbuster comedy movies and recently landed a role in a post-Me Too drama, The Morning Show. The first suggests that Aniston, unlike her co-stars on Friends, became more than her character because of her relationship with superstar Brad Pitt. She writes, the combination of a high-profile celebrity marriage and a well-placed against-type film role helped Aniston to become a movie star. I think this was best shown in the movie Horrible Bosses. She plays an abusive dentist who sexually abuses her employee and her patients. She's assertive and dominant, almost the opposite of her Rachel persona. Although the abuse of men shouldn't be just played for laughs, this role was perfect for her to demonstrate the range of characters she could play. So you could make a compelling case that she successfully transitioned to become a movie star. So returning to our sarcastic boy, I think Matthew Perry tried both options. During the show and after the show ended, he played both for movies and TV, and to be fair, At least during his stint in France, he had success playing in comedy movies like The Whole Nine Yards, which was at least commercially successful. Or he played a guest role in a prestige political drama, The West Wing, created by Aaron Sorkin. After the show ended, maybe the most elaborate attempt for him to become more than his Chandler character was playing in another prestige comedy drama written by Aaron Sorkin, who is known for his smart, fast-paced, witty dialogue, and as it discussed here, Matthew Perry is known for his sarcastic, witty humor. Therefore, this show was seemingly supposed to be a match made in heaven. He was playing in the lead role of a super talented, overtly smart-witted, sarcastic comedy writer. In other words, I believe he was playing this character as an elevated version of Chandler Bing in an attempt to transform his career slash persona into more than a sitcom actor slash celebrity. So one could argue that by playing that part, he was both playing with his celebrity persona and simultaneously trying to become a movie star. So why am I saying a movie star? He was playing in a TV, albeit a prestige TV. Alright, to give you some context, in the late 90s, some kind of a big transition happened in the American TV industry. Some scholars call it the second golden age of television. Shows like Sopranos, The West Wing, and The Wire changed the TV landscape. The quality of these shows was so high that many critics considered them equal to Academy Award winning movies. Hence, the stars of these shows were deemed as much stars as big movie stars. James Gandolfini as Tony Sopranos and later Bryan Cranston as Walter White are the prime examples of how these kinds of TV shows could change the course of a star power of its main actors. However, for Matthew Perry, this match made in heaven resulted in nothing, or purgatory if you will. The show was cancelled after one season and did not elevate his celebrity persona as well as his career. And after the cancellation of Studio 60, it was all downhill for him. He tried creating his own shows, but all of those attempts were failures, both from a commercial point of view and in terms of reinventing his identity. It was at best a repetition of his attempt to become a dramatic, sarcastic persona in Studio 60. In the last couple of years of his life, basically he was retired as an actor. Overall, one could argue that his career was a failure after Friends, and his celebrity persona had been haunted by his sitcom persona, Chandler Bing. At this point, I should talk about the elephant in the room, the addiction. Some of you might think, what about his addiction impacting his celebrity identity? Isn't his addiction the most prominent characteristic of his life after he reveals that he's an addict? I think to answer this question, his memoir that he wrote just a year before his death is key. In Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing, he writes,
I can't say yes to the question why, when I feel like I'm not enough. You can't give away something you do not have. And most of the time I have these nagging thoughts. I'm not enough. I don't matter. I'm too needy. These thoughts make me uncomfortable. I need love, but I don't trust it. If I drop my game, my Chandler, and show you who I really am, you might notice me. But worse, you might notice me and leave me. And I can't have that. I won't survive that. Not anymore. It will turn me into a speck of dust and annihilate me.
I think this quote clearly shows how he defines himself. His identity as he pictures it is caught between two personas. One constructed around his character and one that he never portrays, even in his real life. The real Matthew Perry. Contrary to what I said about postmodern identity, he was in a belief that there was some inherent truth about himself, In his view, Chandler was constructed as a defense mechanism, and his real self was neglected or repressed through the dynamic between his character using humor or even doing drugs and his insecurities. Therefore, his perception of himself is based on not a complete personality, but a negation, a lack, someone that he cannot be. But here's my thing. In my opinion, that perception itself is a consequence of a postmodern condition of these kinds of celebrities. Despite his belief, I think this binary between his celebrity persona and his real self is in itself a pattern.
The real thing for me and the troubles that I've had is that reality is an acquired taste. That's what I believe.
Influenced by this condition. To be more articulate, I think his death and the show BOJACK Horseman could greatly help here. When Matthew Perry died and the way he died led many people to draw comparisons between his personality and BOJACK Horseman, the main character of a sitcom animation by the same name. He was, like Perry, a washed-up 90s sitcom actor. He had the same sarcastic humor, he was an addict, an insecure, fame-obsessed narcissist, struggling to be relevant, and eventually, although BOJACK had never died, he almost died like Matthew Perry. I think those people miss the point of BOJACK Horseman. There are numerous video essays about BOJACK Horseman, mostly about depression or other mental issues represented in the show or philosophical stuff. So BOJACK is about a lot of things, but I think one of them is about contemporary celebrity and fame. Specifically, this show is about sitcom celebrities and the patterns that come with it. Johnny Tuchello's in one of his great video essays about the show, which is called BOJACK's Toxic Patterns, examines the episode Xerox of Xerox, which is about the public perception of BOJACK after the story goes public about how Sarah Lynn, his much more famous and successful co-star of the same 90s sitcom, had died and his role in it. If you have watched the show, definitely check the video out for the details of it. Anyway, he explains this episode shows how he craves public attention, especially if it gets positive. He wants to be in the spotlight. He's obsessed with creating this image of being a good guy while simultaneously being the real guy. And ironically, the more he tries, the more he fails at being good and real in the public eye, and eventually loses the spotlight as well. I think these patterns come directly from that dynamic that I explained. The dynamic between a sitcom celebrity and a postmodern condition of celebrities regarding their identities. So the show and this episode is about how someone like that could get stuck in this dynamic. And furthermore, the more he thinks that he has the agency to change this kind of dynamic, to be real, the more miserable and a failure he could be.
Hearing you say, that's not me, I've changed. But how can we believe you've stopped this pattern of behavior if you won't acknowledge this pattern exists?
I don't even know what pattern you're talking about.
I'll try one more time. Over these last 2 nights, you've drawn us an outline of a person who doesn't think about others, a person who puts his own needs first, and over, other people get hurt.
The same story goes for Matthew. He wanted to be the good guy and the real guy, which is why he came forward with his addiction. He tried to help those who were addicts.
It's an obsession of your mind and an allergy of your body. So this is what happens to me. I start thinking about alcohol, I can't stop. I can't stop thinking about it.
When he did, he got even more stuck with his Chandler character, career and identity-wise. After all, that's Chandler. He can't quit smoking unless he's transformed into a woman.
Don't need to smoke. Cigarettes don't control you. You are a strong, confident woman.
Which is obviously a sexist 90s sitcom gag, but the inability part is real. The inability that he can't quit being an addict is real. His death also brought numerous conspiracy theories. I think because of the way he kind of foreshadows his death in his book and some of his Instagram posts. Those conspiracy theories argue that he was killed and that he wanted help, but I think those instances when he kind of foreshadows his death is the ultimate example of blurring his celebrity and who he is. Like Chandler, the meta-narrator of the show Friends, Matthew Perry became the meta-narrator of the life and death of Matthew Perry. He was an addict sitcom celebrity who had enough chances to turn his life around, and he missed them. He was Mad Men, BOJACK Horseman, Chandler Bing, and Matthew Perry. He was all of them all at once, and he died like he was supposed to be. He died like a sitcom celebrity. So recent news indicates that some of those conspiracy theories might have some truth to them. I want to address that here because some of you might think that my closing arguments would be problematized by this recent revelation, but I don't think it makes any difference. Although I know that abusing any person is the abuser's wrongdoing and not the victim of the abuse. However, I think Matthew Perry knew those people, and I do not think he was dumb enough to not do anything about it. I think he kinda let that happen as he was not ready to go through another cycle of getting clean enough to be conscious of what he is and having the struggle of the dynamic. Hey guys, it's Amirsan here, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to support me. Thank you for your consideration.